In China, you must know, the emperor was a Chinese man. The emperor's palace was the most splendid in the world. Everything in the emperor's garden was wondrous to behold. In the trees lived a nightingale, who sang so beautifully that even the poor fishermen, who had many things to do, stopped still and listened. From all the countries of the world, travelers came to the city of the emperor. When they heard the nightingale, they said, "That is the best of all." Wise men wrote many books about the palace and the garden, but they did not forget the nightingale. That was placed highest of all, and those who were poets wrote magnificent poems about the nightingale in the wood. Some of these books once came to the emperor. He sat in his golden chair and read, but the nightingale is the best of all. "What's that?" exclaimed the emperor. "I don't know the nightingale at all. Is there such a bird in my empire, and even in my garden? To think that I should have to learn such a thing from a book." Thereupon he called his cavalier. "There is said to be a wonderful bird here called a nightingale. I command that he appear this evening and sing for me." "I have never heard him mentioned," said the cavalier. "I shall seek for him." "Sing, please," said the cavalier, and away he ran up and down the stairs. But no one whom he met had heard talk of the nightingale. At last he met a poor little kitchen girl who said, "The nightingale, I know him well. Yes, indeed, he can sing gloriously. Every evening I get leave to carry scraps from the table to my poor sick mother, and when I rest in the wood, I hear the nightingale sing. And then the tears come into my eyes, and it is just as if my mother kissed me." "Little girl," said the cavalier, "you will have permission to watch the emperor dine, if you will take us to the nightingale." So all the courtiers went out in the wood where the nightingale was accustomed to sing. Soon a cow began to moo. "Oh," cried the courtiers, "now we have it!" "No, those are the cows mooing," said the little kitchen girl. Now the frogs in the marsh began to croak. "Glorious," said the Chinese court preacher, "it sounds like church bells." "No, those are the frogs," said the little kitchen girl. "But soon I think we shall hear him." And then the nightingale began to sing. "That's it, that's it!" exclaimed the little girl. "Listen, listen!" And she pointed to a little grey bird up in a tree. "It sounds like glass bells," said the cavalier. "My excellent little nightingale, I have great honor to command your presence at the imperial palace, where you shall charm his imperial majesty." "My song sounds best in the greenwood," replied the nightingale. Still, he came willingly when he heard what the emperor wished. The palace sparkled, bells chimed, all eyes turned to the little grey bird in front of the throne. The nightingale sang so sweetly that tears came to the emperor's eyes. The nightingale was a real success. He was now to stay at court, and to have his own gold cage. When he went for a fly, 12 footmen held on to 12 ribbons tied to his legs. There was no fun in flying that way. One day, the emperor received a large package from the Emperor of Japan, on which was written, "The Nightingale." It was a little work of art, a toy nightingale, very much like the real one, completely covered with diamonds and rubies and sapphires. So soon as the toy bird was wound up, he could sing. Everyone cried, "How beautiful! Now they must sing together. What a duet that will be!" And so they had to sing together, but it didn't sound very well. "That is not the fault of the new bird," exclaimed the music master. "His rhythm is perfect." Then the toy bird had to sing alone. 33 times did it sing the same piece. The emperor said the living nightingale should have his turn. But where was it? No one had noticed that he had flown out of the open window back to the greenwood. And all the courtiers abused the nightingale and said that he was a most ungrateful creature. "We have the best bird after all," they said. But one evening, when the toy bird was singing, something inside the bird said, "Whiz!" Something cracked, "Rah!" And then the music stopped. They sent for the royal watchmaker, who repaired it as best he could. But he warned that the bird must be rested. Only once in a year was it allowed to sing. 5 years had gone by, and a great sadness came upon the Chinese people. They loved their emperor, and now he was ill, and it was said could not live much longer. Cold and pale, he lay on his gorgeous bed. High up through an open window, the moon shone in upon the emperor and the toy bird. The poor emperor could hardly breathe. He opened his eyes, and there saw Death sitting on his chest, wearing his crown and holding his sword and his banner. "Music, music," cried the emperor. "You precious little golden bird, sing, sing." But the bird stood still. No one was there to wind it up, and it could not sing without that. Only Death was there, watching with empty eyes and silence. Then there sounded from the window the most lovely song. It was the little living nightingale, bringing comfort and hope to the emperor. Even Death listened and said, "Go on, little nightingale." And as the little bird sang on, Death gave back the emperor's treasures and departed. And the blood flowed quicker and quicker through the emperor's weak limbs. Thank you, said the emperor, "you heavenly little bird. I banished you from my empire, yet you have sung death from my heart. How can I reward you?" "You have rewarded me," replied the nightingale. "I have drawn tears from your eyes with my song." "You must always stay with me," said the emperor. "You shall sing as you please, and I shall break the toy bird into 1,000 pieces." "Not so," said the nightingale. "It did what it could. I cannot build my nest in the palace, but I will sit by the window in the evening and sing you something so you will be glad and thoughtful. I love your heart more than your crown." Once there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. Only she must be a real one, so all the world he traveled to find her. Everywhere there were plenty of princesses, but how could he be sure that they were real princesses? Something was not quite right about every one of them. Unhappy. Oh, how he wanted to have a real princess. One evening, a terrible storm broke out. It lightened and thundered and rained, rain, rain. It was simply frightful. Out of the din came a knocking at the town gate. The old king went to open it. Who stood outside? Why, a princess! But what a sight she was! Water ran down her hair, through her clothes, into her shoes, and out at the heels. Yet she insisted she was a real princess. We'll soon find that out, said the old queen, and secretly went to the bedchamber, ripped off the bedding, and on the bottom of the bed put a solitary pea. Then she took 20 mattresses and put them on the pea. Then she took 20 eider-down feather beds and put them on the mattresses. On top of this, the princess was to stay the whole night long. In the morning, the old queen asked, "Slept you well?" "Oh," cried the princess, "no, I scarcely closed my eyes. What in the world is in that bed? I lay on something so hard that I'm black and blue all over. It was horrible." Well, here was a real princess. Who could doubt it? Through 20 mattresses and 20 eider-down beds to feel just one pea. Only a real princess could be so delicate. So the prince made haste to marry her. For he knew he had found a real princess. it's in a museum. It's still there for all I know, unless someone has taken it. There now, that's a true story. In the sea, once upon a time, oh my best beloved, there was a whale. And he ate fishes. He ate the starfish and the garfish and the crab and the dab, and the plaice and the dace and the skate and his mate, and the mackerel and the pickerel and the really truly whirly whirly eel. All the fishes he could find in the sea he ate with his mouth. So till at last there was only one small fish left in all the sea, and he was a small 'stute fish, and he swam a little behind the whale's right ear, so as to be out of harm's way. Then the whale stood on his tail and said, "I'm hungry!" And the small 'stute fish said in a small 'stute voice, "Noble and generous cetacean, have you ever tasted man?"
"No," said the whale. "What is it like?"
"Nice," said the small 'stute fish. "Nice, but nubbly."
"Then fetch me some," said the whale.
And he made the sea froth up with his tail. "One at a time is enough," said the 'stute fish. "If you swim to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, that is magic. You will find sitting on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing on but a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders. You must not forget the suspenders, best beloved, and a jackknife. One shipwrecked mariner, who it is only fair to tell you, is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, as fast as he could swim, and on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing to wear except a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders. You must particularly remember the suspenders, best beloved, and a jackknife. He found a single solitary shipwrecked mariner, trailing his toes in the water. He had his mommy's leave to paddle, or else he would never have done it, because he was a man of infinite resource and sagacity. Then the whale opened his mouth, back and back and back, till it nearly touched his tail. And he swallowed the shipwrecked mariner, and the raft he was sitting on, and his blue canvas breeches, and the suspenders, which you must not forget, and the jackknife. He swallowed them all down into his warm, dark inside cupboards, and then he smacked his lips, so, and turned round 3 times on his tail. But as soon as the mariner, who was a man of infinite resource and sagacity, found himself truly inside the whale's warm, dark inside cupboards, he stomped, and he jumped, and he thumped, and he bumped, and he pranced, and he danced, and he banged, and he clanged, and he hit, and he bit, and he leaped, and he creeped, and he prowled, and he howled, and he hopped, and he dropped, and he cried, and he sighed, and he crawled, and he bawled, and he stepped, and he leapt. And he danced hornpipes where he shouldn't, and the whale felt most unhappy indeed. "Have you forgotten the suspenders?" So he said to the 'stute fish, "This man is very nubbly, and besides, he's making me hiccup. What shall I do?" "Tell him to come out," said the 'stute fish. So the whale called down his own throat to the shipwrecked mariner, "Come out and behave yourself. I've got the hiccups." "Nay, nay," said the mariner, "not so, but far otherwise. Take me to my natal shore and the white cliffs of Albion, and I'll think about it." And he began to dance more than ever. "You had better take him home," said the 'stute fish to the whale. "I ought to have warned you that he is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam and swam with both flippers and his tail as hard as he could for the hiccups. And at last he saw the mariner's natal shore and the white cliffs of Albion. And he rushed halfway up the beach and opened his mouth wide and wide and wide and said, "Change here for Winchester, Ashlar, Nashua, Keene, and stations on the Fitchburg Road." And just as he said, "Fitch," the mariner walked out of his mouth. But while the whale had been swimming, the mariner, who was indeed a person of infinite resource and sagacity, had taken his jackknife and cut up the raft into a little square grating all running crisscross, and he tied it firm with his suspenders. Now you know why you were not to forget the suspenders. And he dragged that grating good and tight into the whale's throat, and there it stuck. And then he recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard it, I will now proceed to relate. By means of a grating, I have stopped your eating. For the mariner, he was also an Hibernian. And he stepped out on the shingle and went home to his mother, who had given him leave to trail his toes in the water. And he married and lived happily ever afterward. So did the whale. But from that day on, the grating in his throat, which he could neither cough up nor swallow down, prevented him eating anything except very, very small fish. And that is the reason why whales nowadays never eat men or boys or little girls. The small 'stute fish went and hid himself in the mud under the doorsills of the equator. He was afraid that the whale might be angry with him. The sailor took the jackknife home. He was wearing the blue canvas breeches when he walked out on the shingle. The suspenders were left behind, you see, to tie the grating with. And that is the end of that tale. Once upon a time, on an uninhabited island on the shores of the Red Sea, there lived a Parsi, from whose hat the rays of the sun were reflected in more than oriental splendor. And the Parsi lived by the Red Sea with nothing but his hat and his knife and a cooking stove of the kind you must particularly never touch. And one day he took flour and water and currants and plums and sugar and things and made himself one cake which was 2 feet across and 3 feet thick. It was indeed a superior comestible. That's magic. And he put it on the stove because he was allowed to cook on that stove. And he baked it, and he baked it, till it was all done brown and smelt most sentimental. But just as he was going to eat it, there came down to the beach from the altogether uninhabited interior one rhinoceros with a horn on his nose, 2 piggy eyes and few manners. In those days, the rhinoceros skin fitted him quite tight. There were no wrinkles in it anywhere. He looked exactly like a Noah's Ark rhinoceros, but of course much bigger. All the same, he had no manners then, and he has no manners now, and he never will have any manners. He said, "How?" And the Parsi left that cake and climbed to the top of the palm tree with nothing on but his hat, from which the rays of the sun were always reflected in more than oriental splendor. And the rhinoceros upset the oil stove with his nose, and the cake rolled on the sand, and he spiked that cake on the horn of his nose, and he ate it. And he went away waving his tail to the desolate and exclusively uninhabited interior, which abuts on the islands of Mazanderan, Socotra, and the promontories of the larger equinox. Then the Parsi came down from his palm tree and put the stove on its legs and recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard, I will now proceed to relate. Them that takes cakes, which the Parsi man bakes, makes dreadful mistakes. And there was a great deal more in that than you would think, because 5 weeks later there was a heat wave in the Red Sea, and everybody took off all the clothes they had. The Parsee took off his hat, but the Rhinoceros took off his skin and carried it over his shoulder as he came down to the beach to bathe. In those days it buttoned underneath with 3 buttons and looked like a waterproof. He said nothing whatever about the Parsee's cake because he had eaten it all, and he never had any manners then, since, or henceforward. He waddled straight into the water and blew bubbles through his nose, leaving his skin on the beach. Presently the Parsee came by and found the skin, and he smiled one smile that ran all around his face 2 times. Then he danced 3 times around the skin and rubbed his hands. Then he went to his camp and filled his hat with cake crumbs, for the Parsee never ate anything but cake and never swept out his camp. He took that skin, and he shook that skin, and he scrubbed that skin, and he rubbed that skin just as full of old, dry, stale, tickly cake crumbs and some burned currants as ever it could possibly hold. And then he climbed to the top of his palm tree and waited for the Rhinoceros to come out of the water and put it on. And the Rhinoceros did. He buttoned it up with the 3 buttons, and it tickled like cake crumbs in bed. Then he wanted to scratch, but that made it worse. And then he lay down on the sands and rolled and rolled and rolled. And every time he rolled, the cake crumbs tickled him worse and worse and worse. And then he ran to the palm tree and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed himself against it. He rubbed so much and so hard that he rubbed his skin into a great fold over his shoulder and another fold underneath where the buttons used to be. But he rubbed the buttons off, and he rubbed some more folds over his legs, and it spoiled his temper. But it didn't make the least difference to the cake crumbs. They were inside his skin, and they tickled. So he went home, very angry indeed, and horribly scratchy. And from that day to this, every rhinoceros has great folds over his skin, and a very bad temper, all on account of the cake crumbs inside. But the Parsee came down from his palm tree, wearing his hat, from which the rays of the sun were reflected in more than oriental splendor. Packed up his cooking stove and went away in the direction of Orotava, Amygdala, the upland meadows of Amantarivo, and the marshes of Sonoput.